Today, big day. We are launching the A3 series of Apexes. First time I get to be part of this.
The A3 Apex, that's what I'm here for.
All right, one, brand new guy, never existed on the planet before right here. And these two optimize for the way that you actually use them. So adjustments made. So we understand now using data how the reefers actually use all these ports and sensors, adjust it to optimize it, make it the best experience possible.
Right, that's why I'm here today, Ryan. My name's Paul, I'm from Neptune Systems, right? Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm new to the BRStv channel. This is my first,
This is your first trip here.
This is my first trip here in being filmed. It's momentous.
And by the way, he brought, I use notes a lot to keep you on track, but I've never seen this many notes. So you're gonna see so many different things today about all the new launch of the 3 different Apexes. The world has changed. They will not be the same as it was yesterday, and tomorrow you could actually pick these things up. But before you get that, let's talk about what they are.
Yeah, so like I said, here to introduce to you guys the A3 Apex series. Right? The Apex A3 series is a product line that is more capable than the previous Apex, and it's more accessible for everyone who has a reef aquarium, right? We've thought about this in the sense of finally bringing to the stage a monitoring only solution, Ryan. We've bring the A3 Apex Junior. Okay, it's going to be a monitoring only solution that monitors exactly what you need and opens the door to control when you're ready. Okay, we got our A3 Apex right here. This is replacement for the A2 Apex EL. Okay, gives you control, the monitoring that you're looking for. And then finally, we have the top of the line Apex Pro, right? This is going to be what most people are gravitating for. It gives you the most control and monitoring solutions.
So the interesting part here is there's obviously like price points, this is for me, right? But there's also like effort that goes into it, right? So people talk about controllers and you're like setting it up to turn things on and off or whatever. Like you can have some debate about whether or not you want one of those things. And we'll probably have that debate today.
Not for me, but you could.
Yeah, we'll have some of that debate today. But the one thing that I know for sure is if I put in a room 100 people and I said, your tank is 85 degrees and rising, how many people would like to know right now versus how many people would like to know when you put your finger in the tank someday? 100 out of 100.
I mean, it's the answer is obvious to me for sure, you know.
So it does a lot more than that, but the new Junior here, which is like the foundation of the Elmo. If some of you are familiar with that, we asked the Apex team, by we I mean the BRS team, to make the Elmo as a trial, see if people like the monitor and everything. They made a few hundred of them, and they sold in 24 hours.
Yeah,
you guys bought every last one of them.
I mean, like, to say that you've been asking nicely for a number of years for a monitoring only solution from us would be a little bit of an understatement, right?
I called Kurt one day and I said, look, man, you tell me how many I need to buy, add 50% to that, and we'll buy that many.
Yes.
Just it's that important to the reefing community, because like right now we all just assume that we're gonna like notice when major things go wrong with the tank. We'll talk about this in just a second.
We'll dive deep for sure.
Yeah, but like the wait and run and notice method, really low trajectory.
Yes, in terms of long-term success, the monitoring that the A3 Apex Junior is going to bring to the table, I'm just super excited about. I'm super excited about our customers, future customers, being more successful in what they're doing.
So one of the things that's happened for me is the monitoring bit, like just knowing something's wrong with the tank.
Yeah.
It's been really frustrating for me because like it's hard to have that conversation about the monitoring element and then like not have any legitimate solutions around.
Yeah.
What good is a conversation if you don't have a solution?
And it was something that we wanted to like bring to the market, but we wanted to do it the right way. And that's why I'm here today, right? Is to bring the monitoring only solution, and then also to bring other controller offerings that are going to fit your needs, and there will be a right fit for every aquarist out there.
Okay, so you guys be the judge. I can't wait to hear from all of you. But right here, brand new one, reconfigured to do the things that he just said.
Yes.
Let's get to it.
Yeah. All right. So So first off, Neptune Systems, this isn't our first rodeo, right? We've been around for a little while. Actually, we are in the 25th year of operations as Neptune Systems.
25.
25 years. Our founder, Kurt Panzagras, right, started basically this company from an idea that he had at his kind of local fish club in the Bay Area, right? He saw the other offerings out there. He was an engineer, didn't like them, thought he could do something better, brought that to his reef club at one of the meetings, and like 20 people were like, hey, I want to buy that, right? So he's like, all right, I'll make them for you. And then more people wanted to buy it after that. And then he put an ad in Fish Aquarium and Hobbyist magazine. I may have said that wrong, and then 100 people wanted to buy it, right? And that's kind of where it started, is him wanting a monitoring and control solution. And now we've been delivering monitoring, control, and protection for our customers for over 25 years. And the A3 series just kind of highlights all that.
It's funny. My first experience with it must have been almost 20 years ago, like 18 years ago, is seeing it in the first like Marine Depot catalog.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like 18 years ago, I saw it. Is this for me? I'm a gear junkie. So
Yeah,
like, I'm looking for an excuse.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't get it because I just didn't understand what it did.
Mhm.
I ultimately got the Reef Keeper, which
Mhm.
was really super simple, and I
Mhm.
understood that. But I went over to my buddy's house, and he had the A1,
Mhm.
right? And 16 different tanks hooked up to this thing. And
Yeah.
alarms and stuff spread out. He had wires going all the way upstairs. And like, wow, man! Like, I don't know if this is for me, but holy cow, it's cool.
Yeah.
And then what happened for me is actually I went to a trade show. This must have been like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, you saw the Neptune orange,
Right,
and
right.
it was like packaged in like a little bit less nerdy box, and
Mhm.
somebody was standing up there telling us like what it actually does. Like, maybe this is for me.
Yeah, that was the coming out was the 2012 and the Dallas Macnas when we kind of started introducing the orange and everything like that. I was at that show, and it was just it was exciting,
Mhm.
right? And the cool thing is I've been very reflective over the last month as we've sort of built this 25th anniversary, and it's still exciting.
Mhm.
Right? I can still remember, right, getting my first Apex. It was in a white box, no packaging. It just had a label from Avery on the top of it that had some check marks on it. I opened the box and I was like, really? This is it? And then I set it up, and just everything kind of opened up to me. You know?
It was funny too, is like right after I got it though, I was like, man, the world needs to know. Because I did the same thing with the Reef Keeper.
Yeah.
As soon as I used it and I understood what it did,
Mhm.
like, the world needs to know. We created a bunch of videos on how to run the Reef Keeper.
Mhm.
Then when I got into the Apex, oh man, this thing does so many more things. World
Mhm.
needs to do. And then there was a 30-part series.
Yeah.
All the infinite things you could do with this thing. So
Mhm.
it's been a journey for me as well as like kind of an outsider looking in and learning about it and sharing information and how it works.
Yeah, I mean it has been a journey, and and we are just thankful for our customer base, thankful for the support, and us. We're just thankful that we are still inspired by the aquariums that we keep ourselves, and making great products that we want to use on those aquariums as well.
So I'm
Right.
going to throw one bit in here because it's
Yeah.
important to the 25 years, right?
Uh-huh.
Which is as somebody who A, cares for a lot of aquariums
Mhm.
and B, also, like serves as a source of information for other people that care about aquariums. In 25 years, I guess for me, about 20 years, I've seen a bunch of controllers come and go.
Yep.
Right. A lot of shiny ideas come and go.
Yep.
A lot of things that had a lot of promise come and go.
Yep.
Right. The one thing like that you haven't seen come and go is the Apex. Right. That thing has only gotten better, and the ecosphere got bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's humbling, right? But it's Neptune Systems, right, has continually tried to evolve and meet our customers' needs. And in that, drive to just kind of, wanting to make the best products possible, right, it speaks for itself, And one thing that customers can feel very confident in knowing is that we've been here, we are here today, and we're going to continue to be here in the future.
So for me, I don't know if many of you know this, but like the Apex for us saves a tank here at BRS about once a month. and now I got 50 tanks here. So like that was, you can do the math on how often it happens otherwise. But like, it's countless times it saved the 160, countless times that it has saved the WWC 750. And when I say countless, like it's gotta be, the 160 has been 5-6 years now, or 2015 actually, 7 years. So I would say once or twice a year saves it from a total catastrophic event, right?
That's it's heartwarming in a sense, right? But it just supports its value.
Okay, and poor Malachi and Brent and Josh and all the different people that have taken care of the tanks, who have been in charge of the actual maintenance, because what happens is usually when it saves it, it isn't between the hours of 9 and 5.
Never.
It's between 5 and 9 a.m. 5 p.m. is middle of the night.
Definitely on the weekend.
Yep. And on the Saturday and Sunday when nobody's here. In fact, we recently changed our keys here. And so you have to use a little card key thing. And the card key went down when one of these tanks had a problem the other day. And I freaked the F out because I needed keys for my team to come in here, because that's when it happens. It happens at night and it happens during the weekend. And these things are all super important to us. And the only reason that we knew that we even needed the key is because the Apex is telling us.
Well, I'm glad we've delivered on the promise for you and the BRS team. Right.
I don't use words like that very often, but it really matters sometimes. It matters when like you need to save the animals in here, because I don't want to come in here to a bunch of dead animals.
Nah, dude, that's exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
Anyways, we can go on and on about why we think
25 years.
Why the Apex is great.
25 years. It's for me.
Yeah.
All right. So does that move us on into the actual explanation, or
we're getting into the A3 Apex series. We kind of alluded to a little bit, but now like everyone, I already know what's happening out there, right? And it's, oh my gosh, what about my current Apex, right? Don't worry, you're not getting left behind. All right. We are going to continue to make sure that if you use an A2 Apex, right, and you use an A2 Apex EL, we're going to continue to support that just the same way that we support the A3, because the A3 is just is an offering that basically just gives you a little more, right? And I'm using these words A2, A1, and that's words people haven't heard before, right? So the A3 Apex is what we're coming to offer, tomorrow starting. Okay, the A2 Apex is what you have right now, the A2 Apex and the A2 Apex EL. If you can still have an Apex Classic, we called it, or we now are going to call that an A1 Apex, right? We use A1, A2, A3, because we're going to keep calling it an Apex. Make sense? Good, cool. But that kind of like, what actually did we make better, Ryan?
Okay, so it is essentially a reconfiguration of ports on all of these things, a different offering of the different things mixed together in like a different jambalaya. Starting with the Junior here, right?
So the Junior, right, is the monitoring only solution. We've already put those cards on the table. All right, so there's no control that's built into the Junior. Can you add control later? Sure. But essentially we've taken our FMM module and we put it inside the Apex controller. Our FMM module is what allows for cool accessories to be added to the Apex. So these have been leak detectors. These have been optical sensors. These are new sensors that we're also coming out with, that we did a sneak peek with on last week, the liquid level sensors. So there's all these accessories that you can plug into these FMM ports, and now those ports are built directly into the unit. There's no additional module you need to get to add that functionality. The Apex Junior has 2 of those.
Yeah, so in the bottom of this thing is what you're going to find is 2 of the Aquabus ports, which means you can plug in an infinite amount of things. So
any of the Apex products that use Aquabus, or
with one thing we'll get to later, every single thing that's in one of these things could eventually be in this. So this is the baseline. You can grow into whatever. You're not like hampered by anything. All right, in there's those FMM ports. So what are the things that could go in an FMM port?
I mean, it's any of our FMM accessories. So what's included with the system is an optical sensor, a magnetic optical sensor, and a leak detection probe. Right? So those are the probes that are included with those. You can not use those and use a different FMM accessory if you wanted.
What comes to mind is a flow sensor, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're using like a UV sterilizer and you want to know it's optimized, well, now without necessarily the full Apex control, I can actually monitor a flow rates by plugging one of those things in. What else plugs into those things?
I mean, you get different types of leak sensors. We have 3 different variations now. The 1, 2, and 3 leak detection modules. We have multiple types of optical sensors, the flow sensors, and the liquid level sensors, which we'll go into a little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, like, Ryan, I mean, you've been so excited about an Apex Junior. I mean, like, you know, what is it real? What do you think it's really going to save people from?
Okay, so I took some notes here, and this is why. And I'm going to preface this. I've talked to a bunch of people about this thing over the years, and some of them more recently, right?
Yeah.
And some of them who are like avid anti-control people, right?
Yes.
Like they're like, I'm the controller, right?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
right?
yes. I'm familiar with this.
After this
attitude.
conversation, 100 out of 100 have all changed their mind, right? So come along for the ride here, and
I'm excited to hear that. Ryan.
Yeah, okay.
I am. I really am.
All right, so this thing has a temperature port, a pH port, and a couple of those FMM ports. Comes with a flow sensor or a liquid or
magnetic optical sensor,
optical sensor for
and
water,
leak detector,
and a leak detector. So this is what this thing is going to do for you, because it's going to happen to every single one of you eventually, long enough timeline. So the first thing is temperature. Right, so ask the question, if the temperature of the tank was 85 degrees, would I want to know? 100 out of 100 say yes.
Absolutely.
If it was 70 degrees, 100 out of 100 no.
Absolutely.
The next question you ask yourself is, how would I know if the thing didn't tell me? And it's usually like the dipstick method. It's like I put my hand in, it was cold, it was hot, or whatever.
Or you come home and you see that your fish are lying
dead.
on the bottom, but gasping for air because the tank got too hot, or any number of reasons, right?
Which is like, you know, often I look for the precursors. I don't want to wait until like something's health is, detrimental. I want to actually solve it beforehand. So, which is like the temperature is now, 82 degrees. Tell me it's 80 degrees. Tell me, I'll go do something about it.
And the other thing about this is once you start to monitor this stuff 24/7, you get to the opportunity to create a more stable environment, right? And stability is the key to success. You just need to make sure that you keep things in close, tight parameters, and you'll be successful. So not only are we going to tell you when it's out of bounds, high or low, but you're going to get to understand that, like, oh, I actually need to keep this room a couple degrees colder, right? Or, oh, I really should probably turn my heater down just a little bit, So you get insights like that.
So it's graphs too. I didn't even think about this till just now. You've got access now to Apex Fusion, which now will not just give you the temperature and the alarms and stuff, but I can go back and see what it's been for the last month.
Just by monitoring it, right? You're not actually injecting any control into this yet, right? You're just watching what is happening, and half the battle is just knowing what's going on, right?
So why this matters on this spectrum, this is just one of the 4 things, right? So if you can say these things to yourself, right? Is my heater going to break either on or off in the next few years? And for most people, the answer is yes.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Does my heater have an external temperature probe, or even in the head, and I've mounted it wrong, and it's going to get exposed to the air, which means it thinks that it's 70 when it's really not? Is that ever going to happen to the tank? Another answer is the furnace in my house ever going to break, which means that it might get cold in my house. And you might think of the heater as your heater for your tank, but it's actually the furnace in the air conditioner, which is controlling the temperature around 70, and the heater's just fine-tuning.
I mean, you don't want to necessarily oversize heaters, right? Because then if there is an issue, it happens that much more quickly, right? So a lot of what is keeping the homeostasis of your tank and the equilibrium of your tank is just the environment that it's in. And
a lot of newer reefers too, one of the problems that happens is you just don't connect all the dots. So somebody in the household says, you know what, today I just want some fresh air. And it happens to be 90 degrees out, and they opened up all the windows, and boom, major catastrophe for the tank. Or the air conditioner goes out, catastrophe for the tank. But if I didn't know any better, I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, we get a lot of our dealers or people that install these professionally, right? Put them in businesses and things like that. Everyone leaves the business on the weekend, and some of them like never connected the dots of like why this tank was never successful, why it always had ick, or things that happened because of temperature. And it was because on the weekend they didn't cool that place. Right? Like no one was in the office, so they stopped cooling it. And then one of our resellers just like, it never dawned on me that was the problem, right? Because he only was there Monday through Friday too.
A local tank installer, actually, locally. This gets into the pH issue, but he said they were losing fish and coral fish left and right on the weekends as well, right? It was a very specific day.
Yeah.
And it turned out that it was a restaurant, and they had dance night. And on dance night, there was 200 people in there all breathing, and the pH would tank.
Yeah.
And he didn't know why the fish kept dying until he installed like the A1 actually is what it was. And then he knew the pH went all the way down to like 7.2 and got super, super acidic. And that's why we were losing organisms in this tank. But by morning, it would actually go back up. Exactly. You'd never know because it had vented out by then.
I mean, you just segued really well into one of the other things the Junior offers, the ability to understand the chemistry in the aquarium, specifically the chemistry that can make things go wrong really quickly, pH.
So temperature, you probably have hours to solve it, right? Chemistry, sometimes minutes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so one of the first things I ever bought was actually a pH monitor from Pinpoint.
Oh yeah?
Okay. But I didn't know what I was looking at. I was just told to buy the thing. And so, I don't know, it said 8.1, it said 8.3. I didn't know what I was doing.
How did you go look at that? It's when you went over and looked at it.
Yeah, right? Like even if I looked at it though, I didn't know what I was looking for.
Right.
Right. And so like, I don't know, everybody says it's fine between 7.8 and 8.3. Okay, what I didn't later find out is 8.3 is closer to the ocean and where things actually calcify way, way, way faster. And at 7.8, things are actually melting the skeleton in some cases. It's surviving, but surviving and thriving different things.
It's not thriving, exactly.
But what we're talking about now is actually other things I ran into, which is chemistry disasters. Okay, so in this case, pH is actually a really great first indicator that something really bad is going on in the tank. Meaning kalkwasser got overflowed and the pH is skyrocketing. Your two-part doser got stuck on or siphoning through the tube, which means alkalinity is skyrocketing, pH is skyrocketing. I'm trying to think, the calcium reactor, that thing can go wrong in 15 different ways. pH is going to be an indicator.
Starts putting super acidic water into your aquarium, right? That's super calcified.
It could actually tell you the opposite too, which is my CO2 canister ran dry, and now the pH is actually, the tank is going up, which probably means that I got to change that thing up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like pH is just one of those things that kind of, I call them barometers, right? It helps you understand things, but then it really lets you understand when things are not going right,
There's two different ways, though, that this is going to tell you. Or actually three now that I think about it. One is catastrophic. pH is now 9.0, which means save me, drop whatever you're doing, and go save the tank.
And that's like you used kalkwasser in your ATO, the float switch stuck on, or whatever happened, and it dumped a bunch of kalkwasser in.
Okay, so anybody who's followed our channel for a long time knows that on my first tank that's happened to me, I put kalkwasser in the ATO, it got stuck on, dumped 10 gallons in there. And for whatever reason, basically there was an alarm. It was the gurgling noise of the empty ATO that woke me up, and I knew that I had just filled it that day. And I ran and saved the tank, and I dumped vinegar in the tank to get the pH down. Only thing I lost is some xenia, which eventually came back, a couple of crabs. But I knew what to do. Essentially, that gurgling was the alarm. Without the gurgling, I would have woke up to a dead tank. Now with the monitor and the Apexes, I'd wake up because one of the new things in here is what?
We put a sound buzzer alarm inside the Apex.
Beep,
so this has been built into our FMM for some period of time, right? But it's always been this thing that you couldn't do anything with, right? I think it actually in the FMM, it only worked in the standalone version of the ATK. But now in all of the A3 series and all of the FMMs out there, you will have control over the buzzer and the alert noise. That audible alarm is huge. Sometimes, you know, you have your phone on silent at night, you're sleeping, you don't have notifications, but now you have this alarm noise that'll be associated with another form of notification alert.
So I talked about the dipstick method, right? I was like, put my hand and take it's cold.
Yeah.
No. Now I walk in the room. Let's just pretend my phone was like, I lost it or something. I don't know. I walk in the room and I hear beep. It means save me, Ryan. Tank's gonna die. Save me. You're responsible for me. All right, I'm in. Little noise tells me to do something about it. Okay, so next one. So we're saving the tank for chemistry issues. We're saving it from inevitable, all kinds of temperature issues. Now, I mean, just because you know, and just because you know, I'm telling you, like, I would say it's got to be 95% of the time for 95% of the people, you are always within 1 hour of the tank at any given day, time of the day, and you could go home and save it if you needed to.
You could, right?
Yes.
Absolutely, you could get there.
I hate to say it, but even if I was at work and they wouldn't let me, I'm sick, I gotta go. You know, whatever it is. I gotta go save those animals that rely on me.
You don't want me here. You don't want me here. I gotta get out of here right now. Exactly. You know? And so you get notified about these things that are gonna be catastrophic, right? And it doesn't just start with the sensors of like temperature and pH, but it also starts a lot with water sensing, right? The water sensing of where the level is inside your aquarium, specifically your sump return pump section.
So the return pump can be all kinds of things, and we've optimized it here in this case for one thing, but you could use it in a million different things.
Yes.
One, water level's too high. In this case, it means your auto top-off's probably dumping water in it in a way that it shouldn't. It also could mean that your return pump failed, because if your return pump fails, then all the water rushes down into the sump, and
thus
it's
raising
not pumping
the water
up anymore.
level in the sump, right?
Which also means, come save me, because the connection between all of the life support that's happening down in the sump is now totally disconnected from the aquarium, which it's actually designed to support.
Right. And so in the aquarium, without that life support section, can only sustain itself for so long without all that filtration.
And that could be like your return pump failed, but it can also be something as simple as your power strip failed, your GFCI failed, your circuit breaker failed. It could be like all kinds of different things. And when that thing stops, and one of the things to note is, like, if your circuit breaker failed and this thing's on it, this thing has what's called as a heartbeat, which means it's not connected to the tank and to Fusion anymore, and it says, hey, power outage happened, or the circuit breaker tripped, or whatever. I'm not talking to the tank anymore. Come save me.
Exactly. So built into all Apexes, right, is this feature called Heartbeat. Heartbeat is essentially the phone home to our cloud-based service, Apex Fusion. And that phone home can stop for any number of reasons. Number one, it can start for power reasons. Number two, it can start for networking reasons or something like that, right? But within minutes, 20, 30 minutes of that happening, we'll send you an alert and said, hey, we're not talking to your Apex. We don't know why, but we're not talking to it, right? Which can give you insight that something's going on, right? Cool. The other part about optical sensors is when they're low, right? Putting them low is super important, because, Ryan, I mean, how often do you forget to do this? Fill your ATO reservoir.
Dude, I would make them so big so that, like, minimum they have to cover me a week.
Minimum,
right?
Exactly, yeah.
Which has its own potential problems.
Yes.
You know? But yeah, like, dude, people forget to fill their ATOs constantly, out of sight, out of mind.
All the time, right? All the time. And one thing that, you know, when that happens is your evaporation continues to, water continues to evaporate out of the tank. That water level continues to fall in the return pump section. And eventually it gets down so low that your pump is going to start cavitating, right? So it's going to start sucking air. And as it goes lower and lower, it's going to get to the point where it can't even pump water up into the tank. And what happens eventually, if that goes on for long enough, the pump is going to fail and seize up.
So one of the things
Overheats.
there is, many tanks can easily evaporate 2 gallons a day.
Yeah.
And I'm not 2 gallons a day in the whole sump, probably not the biggest problem, but 2 gallons in just that return pump area, which is actually all it has to happen. It can happen in like half a day. That you sucked all the water out of there. And not only have you disconnected the life support from the tank now, but with many models of pumps, it spins uncontrollably and dies. And if it was a really crappy pump, it would die in a way that it added a bunch of toxins to the tank as it burned up.
Right. So having that optical sensor, you putting it low, right? It is probably the most common reason, why you'd want to use an optical sensor, preventing that cavitation, preventing the pump from failing, right? And you can, again, you're probably within an hour of the tank. You can get home, turn it off.
Well, actually, in this case, I would say that if you set it up right, which is just below wherever your auto top off is, you've probably got many, many hours, like half a day probably before it gets down there, which case, all I need now is I got a little alert to my phone saying basically, hey, remember when you get home tonight to fill the
Sump
ATO.
low.
Right?
Yeah. SMP low.
Yeah, dude, done.
Yep.
And so instead of having all the bubbles and burnt up pumps and disconnecting life support and, by the way, higher salinity and other problems like that, now I just got a thing that says, hey, go fill the ATO, because this is something that I bet you most of the people watching this, or at least half of the people watching this, have this problem at least 3 times a year, right? Once a quarter.
I feel like I have it on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And
so if you were a person that, especially going like a 5-year timeline, how often are you going to forget to fill your H2O reservoir?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So
Apex Junior takes care of that. And then Ryan touched on, water level rising, right? There's a certain point when the water level continues to rise, what eventually happens?
Flood.
That's really bad. Do not want it to happen.
Okay, so flood means a couple of different things. One, man, there's water going all over your floor, right?
On the floor.
Yeah. Okay, so that means if you have hardwood floors, done. They will maybe they don't look bad this second, but unless you clean that thing up immaculately, including underneath the stand where it seeped in,
it's a challenge, right? And it can happen for any number of reasons. It can happen again, those pesky ATOs, right? Without a float valve and redundancy, they can go ham and put water on the floor. It can happen due to seams bursting on the sump or bursting on the tank themselves. Typically, you don't get those videos you see from on YouTube or where things just blow out, right? What happens is they start to separate on the top, right, and just a little bit starts to leak out. Okay. And this continues and continues and continues. And then if that weren't attended to for some period of time, then you get the blowout, right? But knowing about that leak and putting that leak sensor in a place where water is likely going to collect first it's worth its weight in gold.
So leaks happen all kinds of reasons. One of them is plumbing. And I'm not talking about plumbing like your hard plumbing. If you plumbed it,
that's not the plumbing that's going to cause the problem.
Yeah, you hard plumb the whole thing, and it didn't leak the day of, it's unlikely to develop a leak. Maybe a union if you took it apart and put it back together, and it'd be a slow leak. But most of it is because you use soft tubing. Something happened, it got kinked, so your overflow is no longer overflowing down in the sump. It's actually overflowing the side of your tank.
Don't use soft tubing for the overflow. Just don't do it. Return pump, maybe.
Well, yeah.
But people do it,
I have done it.
Yeah.
I put a lot of effort and thought into it, and I'm using that super reinforced braided nylon stuff. But I usually using 2-inch, twice the size that I actually need. But in the end, I do all hard plumbing now, but even in those cases, things can happen. And another thing that happens often is I'll see soft tubing come down from the overflow and then just kind of placed in the tank, instead of being hard plumbed into a bulkhead or into some kind of apparatus in the sump.
Things happen. People move stuff, little, whatever. But the thing that I think is the most common with soft plumbing is just those hose barbs, right?
Yep.
Those hose barbs will eventually give way. And if there's enough pressure there, it's going to pop right off. And that's a bad day.
That is a bad day. So, but how long do you want to know about it? In the case of a catastrophic leak, in this case, especially if you're thinking right now, oh my gosh, I have soft plumbing.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about it, how long would I want to know? Do I want to know when I come home and I stumble downstairs and then see the flood? Or do I want to know the moment it happened?
Right. You want to know the moment it happened.
100 out of 100 people just said, I want to know the moment.
I want to know the moment it happened. And I think this segues really nicely into the other A3 Apex.
I got a couple more, actually. I've been taking a couple of notes.
You've thought of other things.
Okay,
Sorry.
One, we also hit on, right? Okay, one of the things that powers the entire tank, every single piece of equipment in the entire thing, all the life support is 100% heaters, all of it, depending on is what?
It's on a single circuit.
Electricity.
Yes, I know.
So think about yourself right now. If you can say the power has never gone out of my house in the last 5 years, low risk for you, right? It doesn't mean that it won't happen in the next 5 years, but low risk for you. If you live in a place like, yeah, the power seems to go out like twice a year here, oh man, bad choice. Also, so this will now tell you, it says, hey, come save me. Because the reality is if I'm sleeping, which is roughly 8 hours a day, I wouldn't know.
I mean,
if the power went out. The beep saved me.
All tanks are different.
I guess it wouldn't beep, would it?
If power's
the phone
out,
would go off.
The phone would go off if power are off. You could, do a battery backup on the unit itself.
Oh, on this, I could put a UPC.
Hold on, let me think. No,
and
you would
router.
You would need to, for the Apex to be able to monitor, the Junior can monitor the power that it receives, but since there's no other power input, right, we wouldn't be able to know that there's power coming from a battery versus power coming from electricity.
So you'd be relying on your phone. Most of us are sleeping next to our phone. You get push notifications, you get a text message saying, come save me, right? But also, more importantly, I'm also away from my house at least 10 hours a day between work and travel and
all those things.
shopping, life, right? So power outage, disconnection of the life support and every single thing in the tank. And also note that it's not just the fact that the heater went down during a power outage. Like if you live in an area where it is either -10 sometimes of the year and other times it's 110, those are issues where I need to get there fast to solve it as well.
I mean, and it's also flow, right? I mean, part of what puts the oxygen into that tank, the oxygen that's in the room, is the flow that we have in our aquarium. As soon as the power is lost and it goes stagnant, right? The fish are consuming that oxygen in the water, and eventually that oxygen goes away.
It is the number one fastest thing that's going to kill the tank.
So, knowing that right away, I'd want to know.
I got two more. Okay.
You got more.
So, I mean, all the stuff we talked about in this tiny little box, and like right now you're saying this is for me or it isn't for me. And I got two little other ones, right? Three. Okay, so inside of this thing, we talked about it before. There's graphs now, right? So I got graphs now of my pH. I can track the pH of the tank. I can solve problems. I got graphs in there of my temperature. I can solve problems. I also have maintenance tasks in here. There's a calendar function inside this thing because I forget all the time. Hey, I got to change out my UV bulb. I don't remember the last time I did it. I can put it in the calendar function inside of the Apex that says, hey, go change that thing. Or every quarter, have a list of things that remind me I'm supposed to do every quarter, or every month, every week, whatever it might be.
I mean,
test kits, it's graphs.
It does the test kits. So basically, what Apex Fusion offers, right, is all the things that we do as aquarists. Me, when I say aquarists at Neptune Systems, we're like, man, I'd really just want to do that all in one place. Right? And that's what Apex Fusion offers, right? So we have a calendar function. We have the ability to track your manual test kits. We have the ability to track notes, right? So if things happen and you want to remember that later, you'll be able to put that in the calendar. And so when you're looking at your graphs, there's like, oh, wait, there's this notation here where something happened that day, right? And that's notated on the graph. So you can go dig deeper if you want, right? And so essentially with the Apex Junior, you're getting Apex Fusion, which is a cloud-based service that has impeccable uptime, a super easy use service that is intuitive and accessible, right? And it's the amount of information that you can glean from that. I mean, I don't use it all. I don't use everything, all the features that we pack into it. I should, but I don't.
They're there. I think about testing actually. So I used to try to write down, alkalinity this week and that week, whatever. But inevitably I'd lose that thing, or I'm writing down on a wet piece of paper with wet hands.
I mean, or using, even if you use an Excel thing, it's like this thing of I'm gonna go type it over here, and then it's just
open up Fusion, put DKH 7.6.
It's all, and I should say too, even the test kits aren't you don't have to put in DKH 7.6. Just tell us what was on the vial. We'll convert it for you.
Done.
Right? Done. We have all the major test kits in there. Red Sea, Salifert, Hanna, right? You just tell us what the syringe shows. We'll take care of the rest.
Okay. Here's the cool part. It's funny.
It isn't cool yet.
It's
It
funny
already
it
is
didn't
cool.
hit the. It didn't hit the notes. This is so funny. Okay. Well, in terms of monitoring only, Trident.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if control isn't my thing, but I do want to monitor everything? I plug in my Trident, and now just with this, I can plug a Trident right into this guy.
Yep.
And now I got calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium monitoring, not just once a day, but multiple times a day of some of them.
I mean, the Trident, when it came out, right, and it is one of our most popular products, bar none. You know, the way that it changes the way that you understand calcification and the health of your coral in your aquarium, it's just eye-opening, right? Like when I first started monitoring this, I was like, I had no idea that I'm putting alkalinity in my tank at night, and I don't even need to do that because no consumption happens at night, right? And so that was just one thing I tweaked in my tank, and then kept alkalinity more stable. And then when I kept alkalinity more stable, I had better success.
I'll give you two
corals
stories
thrived.
from monitoring,
You know?
actually. I got two alkalinity ones. Alkalinity is the one. The calcium and magnesium, nice to know. Glad it's there.
Yep.
Alkalinity, man. Okay, so this was a revelation for me.
Mm-hmm.
One time we cranked up the amount of or the lighting in the 160.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we turn up the lighting 20%, and then lo and behold, the alkalinity level drops 20%.
Yeah.
Wow, man, we had 20% more energy in the tank, and it was consuming 20% more calcium alkalinity for growth.
And the funny thing, that's something you'd understand later.
Afterward.
Like you'd understand that like in a couple weeks normally,
Mhm.
right? But literally you did this thing, and then like a day or two later, you're like, our alkalinity is now is lower, right? You just don't have that correlation, right?
We had the same thing with pH, actually. Put the pH scrubber on there, got the pH up from the 7.8 to 8.0 up to 8.3. Boom, 50% more consumption of calcium and alkalinity. And then we tested later on, spurred BRStv Investigates, and it's growth, 50% more growth.
I know.
The tank's telling us how much alkalinity it consumes.
And that's one of the things one of the things that's most exciting for me about the Junior is not only bringing this monitoring only solution, but this concept of opening up the door to the rest of our ecosystem, right? Like we make products that we hope will make you more successful. It has made us more successful as hobbyists at Neptune Systems, and we want to share that success with you. And the Junior opens the door to that entire ecosystem of Neptune Systems products, the Trident included.
I got one more for you in the same wheelhouse because it's so important. Anybody here, you ever use fluconazole? Wipe out BRStv?
I have not used it, but I know people who have.
Works really well. All right, so everything doesn't die, so you assume must be okay, right? And I guess that's true. But again, like in reefing, we often dictate, everything dies or doesn't as the only measurement of success. Okay, in this case, we used the fluconazole, definitely wiped out all of the bryopsis from the tank, but also the alkalinity shot up, meaning the tank stopped consuming the alkalinity as fast as it was, which means the health of the animals were absolutely affected in here.
Yep.
It stopped utilizing the elements out of the tank. So was it enough to kill it? No. But it wasn't enough to stop it from growing, and it would stop it from its normal biological function.
It went to a mode of It went from a mode of thriving to surviving.
To surviving.
Right? It had to survive through that fluconazole treatment, and once that treatment was finished, it slowly got back to thriving again, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then now, a couple other things you could do with this thing that just come to mind.
You just keep riffing here.
I was literally when you heard the story earlier when I called up Kurt and just tell me how many. People need to have this thing. Okay, so one of the things that's always frustrating me about auto water changes is I need to invest in an Apex.
The whole thing,
right? And then I got to buy that thing. It gets expensive. Now this thing plus a dose is actually about the same cost as any other auto water change system out there.
But it adds all the monitoring.
Everything else we talked about in a second ago. Right? Okay, so now
excited.
I have access to auto water changes in my tank. In fact, now I can monitor another thing. I can plug in the core, which is the return pump, right? And now the core doesn't just tell you like, hey, I'm working or not working. It actually gives you like the 5 different reasons that it is working or not working as well. This is the thing that you should go check. Now, I'm not just monitoring whether or not the core pump is working. It's telling me what you need to fix.
We're telling you the health of that pump. We're telling you how fast it's going. When there's errors, we let you know what type of errors there are. Those errors can revolve around voltage issues. They can revolve around cavitation issues, any number of blockage issues. The core is smart. We'll tell you what's wrong.
Okay, so I said earlier, I made a big statement, but I forget exactly what it was. But I made a statement which is basically, guys, can you say that this thing wouldn't help your tank? And I don't think anybody can say this. Right?
I just don't. I don't see the argument against it. You know, that's just me, right? But go back to that question that you started at the beginning. If your tank is overheating,
would you want to know?
Wouldn't you want to know?
I feel like if you said, nope, that's not for me, there's some kind of weird agenda there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is either. So, but this now does segue us. Are we ready to segue?
We're ready to go on to its bigger brothers that we know all about.
All right.
But this was the brand new revolutionary thing, could change the trajectory of so many people's tanks.
I'm happy you're excited, and I hope our customers are excited, our to-be customers are excited to be able to get into a solution that fits for them, right? But the next question about this is, and you've asked me this several times, your tank is overheating. It's at 85. Wouldn't you want to do something about it right now?
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
This is the control piece, right?
Yes.
Boom. Basically added this thing on to this to create this.
Yes.
Right?
So the next offering in the A3 series line is the A3 Apex. It includes everything the Apex Junior had, okay? Except instead of 2 FMM ports, it has 3 of those FMM ports. Thank you.
So all those little sensors, the optical sensors, the water level sensors, the flow sensors,
right?
All that
it
stuff.
Includes
it
includes the same sensors that the A3 Junior includes. So it includes the magnetic optical sensor, and it includes the leak detection sensor. Okay, but then it adds the energy bar, right?
And an Ethernet port. We'll get to later.
Yes. And so there is one other striking difference between it. It does have the Ethernet port included. The A3 Junior is Wi-Fi only. It does not have an Ethernet port. The A3 Apex has an Ethernet port, and I think we're going to get into that in a little bit.
So there's a control piece of this thing.
We can do it now too. You want to get into it now?
No, we'll get to it later.
Okay.
So the control piece here is something that I think is really interesting because, like, a lot of people will say, I'm my tank's controller, which is true, right? Okay, but there's different versions of that thing, right? So anybody who thinks that they don't own a controller is wrong because you have that little box on the end of your heater,
or you have it built into the heater on like this screw dial.
Hey, look under your Phoenix, that's a temperature controller.
Yes.
That little box on the end of your auto top off is a level controller.
Yep.
You know, the timer on your light is a controller turning it on and off. If it's integrated and it ramps up and down, it's a controller.
Unless you're going over there and you have a titanium heater that you are literally plugging into the wall, right? And then unplugging into the wall because you went and looked at the thermometer at your tank, but yep, time to unplug that. You have a controller on your tank.
So what this actually is called redundancy.
Yes.
So you can either set up the Apex to be the thing that turns on those things off and on, or you can, and then those things you can set them up to be the backup, or you can set those things up to be the primary, and the Apex can be the redundant. It doesn't matter which way you do it.
I mean, I have a preference. You know, personally, I like to know. I will set my heaters to be maybe 82 degrees or so, right? So unless it's 82 degrees, the heater thinks that it should be on. Okay. Then the Apex controls that between 79 and 79.5 or something, or 79 and 80, whatever. And let's say, for example, the temperature probe comes out of the water. Let's say, for example, an outlet, doesn't work the way it's supposed to. It doesn't happen, but let's say that were to happen. Then the heater's controller says, I should turn off at 82, right? So it keeps it on, turns it off when it gets above 82.
both are right in different situations, or mentalities or quality of equipment. So if you bought like the cheapest possible thing known to man, I probably want to run it off this thing. If I bought, somehow, I don't think this exists, but if I bought like a $2,000 heater with the best thermostat control known to man, came out of the space shuttle, well, maybe I want to use that one.
Maybe.
You can actually debate this one quite a bit, but this is the part about control that I think is actually interesting, right? All right, so I'm at work. I get my alert. The temperature is now 83 degrees. I can go home, or I can control it just by using my finger to turn the damn thing off.
If you didn't want
That's control.
That's control, right? You can basically decide that, the heater's always running the way it's supposed to do. You get an alert, and you just can manually turn that outlet off if you want. I would probably set it up, right, so it automatically turns off when it gets above a certain degree, right? But you have the ability to be the ultimate one who decides when things are on and off if you want.
I think what we're talking about here is skill levels a little bit, like in like an intimidation factor. Like I'm gonna go turn it on, and I'm gonna have all the things turn on and off and whatever. Some people will say that's for me, and I'm gonna set it all up, run the task, and get it set up. And other people, like if I asked you if it was 83 degrees, and do you want to go home right now, or would you like to just flick a switch and turn the heater off? 100 out of 100 again say, I think I
want to turn it off. Yeah, I mean, I'll just flick it off, right?
Right, it's 80 degrees. Should I turn on a fan? Like, because the fan is like remarkable tool, actually.
Flick on the fan.
Just turn on the fan.
Evaporative cooling. There you go.
Heat is energy. If evaporation is actually energy, and heat, it will release it into the air. So actually, my friend Elliot at Marine Collectors just had a major heat problem.
Oh, yeah?
Because California's so hot.
It is.
He just took a big, and this is a huge tank. I think he's got a 900-gallon tank or something like that. And imagine how big your chiller would have to be.
Oh, they have to be
mammoth, right?
Mammoth, right?
Okay. And instead, goes and buys a box fan from the store and hangs it from the ceiling and shines it out.
Takes care of everything.
It worked too well was the problem.
I know.
Right?
He had to start heating it, didn't he?
Well, he's going to have to now start plugging or unplugging, or he's going to use the Apex to turn it on and off.
Right. So, and there is an intimidation factor. Oh my God, I'm doing these things automatically, right? Don't worry. We do take you through all of these things very slowly with our task setup. So, for example, if we just say, well, when do you want your heater to turn on? Like, how cool a temperature? I want it to turn on at 79. Okay, great. You want it to turn off at 80? And you say, yeah, I want it to turn off at 80. Tell me what outlet you plugged it into. Done. That's it. That's all you got to do to set that up. The fan would be the exact opposite way.
So the big advancement here is the audible alarm that's going in here, and all of the sensors in here.
The FMM included sensors, and there's an additional, so there's the 2 sensors that come with it. So you have one extra port where you could add another leak sensor if you wanted it. You could add our liquid level sensor, which we're going to talk about in a second, or any of our flow sensor.
The thing that comes to mind is a flow sensor, because there's so many people using UVs these days as we embrace parasite control in the tank, and they just don't work if you don't know what the flow rate is. So
I mean, the question becomes.
I got one more about this thing.
You do?
Oh, go ahead.
No. You can go.
All right. This is another piece that, like, when we talk about monitoring, right, is basically we're monitoring all of the things that are happening in the tank. Temperature's going up, pH is going up, but really what's a precursor to that is equipment failure. So when equipment fails, then we start to measure it later down the road.
We start to see the effect of that equipment not working.
Okay. So in every one of these outlets here is a thing called power monitoring. So it monitors how much power the thing is taking. And here's the reality. When all of that stuff that we put in the tanks, it's all elements of life support, all of it takes power to run, right? We talked about how important like power outages happen, but like when a return pump stops working, it stops taking power. When it slows down, it actually takes less power. When the power heads get dirty, they take less power. So we can actually catch those power heads when they're dirty and doing half the flow before we wait for them just to completely stop. Right?
It's one of those things that it's always kind of mind-blowing to me how power actually shows how equipment is running. Great example is even a skimmer, right? So a skimmer, right, normally pulls 30 watts, let's say, okay? A lot of times that vent area will get clogged, right? And when that venturi gets clogged, the pump continues to pull water through it, but just doesn't pull in the air. You know what? It takes more energy to move the water than to move air and water together. So you'll consume more power from your skimmer when that venturi is clogged.
Basically, what I'm saying is anytime anything falls out of its normal range of power consumption, or is on when it shouldn't be, or off when it shouldn't be, this thing will tell you. And again, like this really simple things like, hey, my power head is either, it normally runs at 20 watts and it's now taking 10. It's saying clean me, right?
Yeah.
And I go clean it, but also the inverse in here. If it's 20 watts and it's still taking 20 watts, do I want to take the time to clean it this month, or should I wait until it's like 18?
One of the cool things too about it is it's like, well, I don't know what's a normal range. Once a device is running on an outlet for a couple days, we actually pretty much know how it's going to behave, right? We take that information and we recommend based on this power consumption. And if that power consumption is what you would say is normal, right? We'll tell you this should be the high bound, this should be the low bound. Right? You can set it to be higher or lower if you want it to be, but we'll make recommendations just on how it's been operating for the last 7 days.
It's super, super easy to set up. So if I had to actually spell this out, I would say monitoring only, right? Okay, but here is actually monitoring only plus, right? So I've managed all the sensors and stuff, but I'm now actually monitoring the performance of the actual gear that's plugged in. Super, super easy. Just run the power monitoring task, just answer a couple questions, done.
I mean,
then I have control. Control could mean that I've set it up to actually automatically turn things on and off, but control could also just be what we call remote control. I mean, I can control and turn this thing on and off from my vacation, from my buddy's house, from work, instead of actually having to be in my house, and then I can go do it. I can have my couple of beers with my friend and go home without worrying about it.
I mean, it's for me, the monitoring plus control is going to be the best fit for most customers. This power bar is something that is the workhorse of our product line, and it does a really good job in what it does. But I mean, a lot of people, you could take a junior and say, you know what, I want that junior, and I want to add control. You can add an Energy Bar 832 to it, no problem. Okay, but what are you missing in that situation? So you could either go the A3 Apex, which includes that, or do the A3 Junior plus the power bar. What you're losing though is you're going to lose the Ethernet port that's built into the Apex.
So just basically these two things and these two things cost about the same amount.
They're about the same.
You can upgrade into this thing at any point in time, pick this thing up, add this thing as you want it. But there is that one thing that you will not be able to do later.
Yes. And I mean, honestly, think about your home, Ryan. You know what I mean? Like, is there any opportunity? Do you ever have an situation where where Wi-Fi isn't working?
My last house, it was a monthly thing where I had to reboot that stupid router.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was. I never figured out if it was the Google one, the Nest, or the Google Nest system, or if it was the router that came from Xfinity.
Right.
I don't know, but I had to reboot the things every month.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about a life support system, right? And a Wi-Fi which will work 98% of the time, 99% of the time. But when you're talking about a life support system, for me, I'd want just be able to hardwire it to my router.
So for the reality is this thing, because it's a Wi-Fi, I'm looking for like 99.9% uptime, and I'm probably going to get that.
Yes.
And better yet, if it doesn't connect, it's going to tell me within a half hour, which is actually kind of cool because that means that everything that's Wi-Fi connected in my house, if the router went down, this thing actually told me about the whole house.
Exactly.
But if you have an Ethernet port like near your aquarium, wire it, because a wire almost never fails.
It's going to work better.
Yes.
And it's going to be a more reliable solution. So that's really one of the big differences.
So if you look at it, it's just really one FMM port and the Ethernet port for the most part.
You lose the I/O port, which
Oh.
gives you the ability to do the cool adaptive reef boxes, the push button boxes, which we could talk about those, but little accessories you have to add on.
That piece you could add on later.
You could add it on with a PM1 or TN2 module or something.
Okay, has any of you ever watched Followed My Tank at home? Those little boxes that can flip one switch and it turns off all kinds of lights, all kinds of pumps all at once. I do my water change and then
it's just one of those fun accessories that you would have to get something else to be able to use.
And I actually set it up to do push button water changes. Like I push one button, it just does a water change for me instead of automatic. You can do a lot of different things with that I/O port I forgot about. Reads, open up your cabinet, and all of a sudden the lights underneath turn on. They turn off when you close it.
Right.
Yeah,
so
cool
you
stuff.
can add that. You can add the junior capability to add that function. You can add the capability of more FMM ports by getting the FMM module. All those things you can add to a junior, but you'll never be able to add that Ethernet port.
Okay, I think we're now ready for the Big Daddy.
The A3 Apex Pro, is that the Big Daddy?
One.
Yeah, look at this guy. So we got the A3 Apex Pro here. This is the top of the line A3 Apex offering, right? It starts on the base unit, which has the nice soft touch finish. If you've seen the Neptune Systems Sky, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it just feels premium, and it has it's a little bit darker than the normal gray and silver that we run. It runs a little bit darker gray on it. Big difference on the A3 Apex Pro is it's got 4 of those FMM ports, rather than 3 on the Apex, 2 on the Junior. It additionally adds ORP monitoring. Okay, so ORP, I think it's super valuable, right? It's a measurement of water cleanliness. Do you see any value in ORP?
Okay,
I didn't even ask you.
I've had a recent. I mean, you guys seen a sneak peek here. I'm just going to divert this conversation for a second. But yes, ORP here, right? I previously didn't spend a lot of energy in this thing because it's mostly tied to ozone and whether or not there's a bunch of garbage that just went in the tank all of a sudden. Recently, I've had a few interactions with people who use ozone. Okay, one of them is a tank installer on fish-only systems. They put ozone on there. And what they do is they don't turn it on very often. The fake inserts get dirty and covered in algae. They turn the ozone on for a couple of days. It totally cleans off all of the algae on the things, and it looks brand new and clean.
Didn't know that. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, I know somebody else who uses it in their systems. Again, this one's not surprising, but instead of having dirty brown water all the time or yellow water, it's crystal clear all the time.
Yep.
But when they put that thing on there, what they found actually, which was a surprise, was there was fish in there that had big open sore of urinema on it. It was almost certainly going to die. That it almost immediately went away.
Right.
I mean, there's health things tied to ozone that I really, really want to explore. One of the cool parts about it too, and you probably need some control for this, is the part that's hard to explore is the health issues. But in this case, they use the Apex to turn the ozone on only at night for a couple of hours. And then, so just 2 hours at night.
And then they're monitoring the ORP to make sure it doesn't get out of bounds.
ORP to make sure it's safe.
I think in general, when people talk about ORP, right? Oh, I know what uses ORP, right? Or you don't see the value in it. It's just because I think it's because it's this complex idea. It's essentially the ability for the aquarium to keep itself clean, right? It's the ability to reduce contaminants. It's the ability to take your ammonia and reduce it to nitrites, then to reduce it from nitrites to nitrates. It's that electric charge available to reduce those contaminants. And it's not necessarily the value that's important, it's the behavior that's important, right? You'll see basically a high point at night, low point during the day, and it just goes up and down, up and down. And when you see it change suddenly,
something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
Yep.
Okay, you're not doing ozone or anything like that. If you see that change suddenly, it means either there is voltage leaking into the tank, like electricity, physically going into the tank, causing the electricity in the tank to go up, and thus ORP rises, or there's a major event like, my nephew came by and thought the fish were hungry, dumped all the food in there. now there's a bunch of contaminants to reduce, and there's not enough charge to be able to do that, right? So I find that ORP, I talked about a barometer a little bit earlier about pH. I see ORP as another barometer.
So less understood, unless you're talking ozone, but you're right. It's if it goes outside of its normal range, go look at the tank because there's probably a reason.
There's something going on.
Okay.
You know,
there's also a salinity port on here.
there is the salinity port. You know,
The-
we'll touch on that in a second.
Yep.
Okay. And then the variable voltage outputs.
Mhm.
So these are 0 to 10 volt outputs that allow for Apex ready control of tunes of pumps, different return pumps like the Red Dragons, the Biz, all those sorts of different things. So that's what's like in the Apex base unit. You know, all those features that you know in your current Apex, but has those 4 FMM ports on it.
So this has an FMM port on it. What is it?
So this, we did a sneak peek last week about it, but this is probably the sensor I'm most excited about. It's the liquid level sensor, all right? It allows you and gives you the ability to monitor the water depth in a water vessel, like your sump, like your ATO reservoir, like your additive container, you know, just like your return pump section, like anywhere. Okay, this has the ability to measure the depth of water in inches. And let's be real, right? If something isn't going right with your aquarium, you know, what do you typically go and do first? You open that sump door and you look to see where the water level is for your return pump, right? And so now, that tells you, you know, like everything's working fine. That tells you if the return pump isn't working fine, if that water level's high or that water level's low. It tells you you didn't fill up your ATO reservoir. That tells you when you're going out the door and you have this in your ATO reservoir, how many people stop, I'm about to go out the door, I'm about to live my day, but I got to go check that ATO reservoir really quickly. You go and check the ATO reservoir, you're like, no, it's fine. You didn't actually need to go do that. Wouldn't you just want to pull out your phone and just look at it and be like, oh yeah, my water level's 80% full.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about it. Or my water level's 50% full. Or it's 10% full. I got to stop what I'm doing and I got to fill my ATO reservoir, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this doesn't tell you, it gives you some warning signs, like of what you need to do. Even like indications of maintenance, like, hey, your salt bucket, you know, like, you know, it's telling me how much salt I actually have. Whoops. How much salt
this is the
actually have left.
Yeah, exactly. So this is our 35-inch version. The one that's included in with the A3 Apex Pro is the one that we felt was going to be the most accessible for the most people, right? And that's our 15-inch liquid level sensor, all right? This is included with the A3 Pro system, okay? And it essentially, the idea here is that you're going to put this in the return pump area, where you put in your ATO reservoir area. It'll clip onto a baffle, okay, in the sump or the side of the sump or anything else, right? And it will, once you connect it, it's like just having eyes on your sump, knowing exactly what's going on.
I think, and then when there is a problem, instead of just seeing like, hey, the water level triggered, like I can now know the severity of the problem. How fast is it happening? Give me an indication of what is happening.
I mean, I don't know. I've found that since I've been monitoring the return pump section, it's always within about 1/10 of an inch. It's always either at 3 inches or 2.9 inches.
So how close does it read? You said it measures by the inch, but it's actually more than that.
Yeah, so the shorter ones, right? It'll read granulations of about 1/10 of an inch, right?
Yep.
The shorter ones are a little bit more precise than the longer ones. Makes sense. But essentially, on your 15-inch one, if we say it's 3 inches, it's like 3.3 to 2.7 inches. Not a really big difference, you know. And it really. It stays, once it reads a level, it's always pretty much going to read that level, you know, in terms of true accuracy, right? You know, it's about 0.3 of an inch. In terms of precision, it's always the same.
And so it will read up to 1/10 of an inch, just tiny little fluctuations in it. So a big change from how we measure water level. This is something you could pick up for, like you said, the A2 series, or plug them in your FMM.
In that vein of, like, you know, the A2 Apex with an FMM module, you have an open port. you'll be able to add one of these on, no problem at all.
You can start to see the value though of like why there's 4 ports now. Like, like what are the other types of things that I might want to plug into these things, and get leak sensors, water level sensors, alarms, and all kinds of stuff. So one of the things that has changed though about this module is there is a port here for the salinity probe, but this model no longer includes a salinity probe. Why?
There were a lot of reasons for not including the salinity probe, but we basically used data more than any of it, right? The data showed that that the salinity probe isn't often used, right? Our customers in general, we felt that we could offer them better bang for their buck and accessories and things like that. And it's why we included the liquid level sensor and another form of leak sensing in replacement of that salinity probe.
So if I had to say it for myself, I boil it down to the fact that when you build one of these things that has 8 million sensors and things that you could plug into it, it does everything under the sun, the box should include the most commonly used, most valuable sensors.
Yes.
Right? So those FMM sensors now are like the most popular add-on to these things, right?
They're super accessible. The liquid level sensor, I think, is going to be eye-opening for a lot of people, right? And so we felt that, our top of the line system needed something that was going to be, people were going to be most excited about and looking for, right? And the salinity probe just, didn't fit that anymore.
So why is that? I mean, because like you think salinity is like a super important thing, and it is, but the reality is it like, as somebody that uses the salinity port on a lot of different tanks here, I gotta tell you, I can't think offhand a time that the salinity probe has actually saved my tank in the way I can think of everything else.
Exactly. I mean, how does salinity change? Salinity changes in your aquarium due to evaporation. How do we take care of evaporation? We add fresh water, right? Salinity would change in that regards if something wasn't working correctly with the fresh water, which we're now taking care of with the liquid level sensor or the optical sensors, right? And then, or when you did a water change, you didn't mix up your salt correctly,
I can think of actually a time that it did. Back in the day when we switched the 160 over to the Trident method, you stopped doing the water changes. Okay, and then all that 2-part and stuff that's going in there actually adds salinity.
Adds more and more.
In a water changeless environment, you'd be surprised how fast that adds up. And in an environment where you do water changes, it really doesn't. So, but like, there just are more finite reasons. But so salinity probe here, or port here, probe now optional, and creates a high value package.
I mean, it also just becomes a thing, you touched on it, value, right? I feel that with the way that things are these days in terms of supply chains and, all pricing and all this sorts of things, it just made sense to make something that was a little bit less volatile.
Okay, so there are a couple other accessories. You mentioned the optical one. That one's changed, right?
Yes. So we have leak detection in the A3 Apex Pro, but it is an improved leak sensor.
Look at that.
Okay, so this is our what we're going to call the optical leak sensor. So instead of using kind of conductive sort of leads, like the solid surface leak detector included with the A3 Junior and the A3 Apex, it uses optical technology to be able to know if it's wet or not. Okay, in that it has a lot of features that that aren't in the solid surface probe, in the sense that is it completely encased. All right, the solid surface probe, when it gets wet, you got to dry it off, right? And if it got wet with salt water on conductive surfaces will eventually corrode, right? So you had to dry it off in fresh water, and you had to go through this whole process, and they just didn't have the same kind of durability that the new optical leak sensor have, because it's completely encased. Okay, and then the other thing is, because we use conductive strips, if you were to place it on a conductive surface like cement or metal or something like that, you would often get a false positive that it was wet. Now you have to put the paper towel down to kind of avoid that issue. Now place this on any surface, well, they're going to let you know if it's wet right away.
So with the Pro or with the Apex normal model, you would get a magnetic optical eye for water level sensing. You'd also get
the solid surface
the
Pro.
solid surface one. So with the Pro, though, you're upgrading the type of sensors to things that are more reliable and more accurate.
Yes. So pretty exciting there in terms of what the feature set is included there. Really the A3 Pro is the most premium sensors with the most control solutions. And in terms of the good, better, best formula, definitely the best, right? But that's not all. Ryan's got a nice hat on today, don't you guys think?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I got converted today.
Yep. So in celebration of the Neptune Systems 25th anniversary, right? Launch day A3 Apex Pros, so the limited availability, are going to be a special 25th anniversary edition. So in that 25th anniversary edition, you are going to get an Apex base unit that has special badging on it that indicates that it is a special edition unit. The 25th anniversary emblem is, you can see right there. Okay, pretty cool that, you know, forever that A3 Apex base unit will be a reminder of Neptune Systems delivering on its promise, right? And then further, you know, we've included a thank you letter that personally signed by Kurt. I made him sign all of them with his hand. I said, "What are you doing this weekend?" He said, you know, I'm like, sounds like you got a couple hours then that you could sign a whole bunch of letters for us. And he did. He personally signed a thank you letter that he wrote himself, right? Just thanking our customers for their continued support over the years, and just you know, being really humbled by the whole experience of, you know, owning and founding Neptune Systems. You know, he's a great guy, and I'm just it's really great to see him go through this, you know. And then finally, it wouldn't be a giveaway if you didn't get a t-shirt to be able to celebrate the 25th anniversary. So these are redeemable with every A3 Apex Pro that is available on launch day for a limited time. And then let me reach over here. Fell a little bit. It was graceful, wasn't it? Yeah. And then with all of those, you also get a special 25th anniversary hat. Ryan has a special edition trucker hat there. These are all the form fit hats that are included with the A3 Apex Pro. And how you redeem it and all of that will be very evident, you know, once you open the package and everything like that. So
25 years, man, celebration. That's very awesome.
So we are very excited that we were able to bring all that together for the A3 Apex Pro launch days, and the 25th anniversary edition is what we're calling it.
So one of the cool things I think that, like, as even having just this conversation, is a revelation, man, for me, which is 25 years ago, this started as a controller. Like it was going to turn stuff on and off.
It started so much less than that, actually, but it really just started as kind of this monitor thing, right? That you would have to use these other X10, if any of you know what it's called, right? So all these X10 controls that we didn't even make ourselves. It's a funny story, sorry.
Yeah, it's come a long ways, but like for the first time, like as you explained it today, like I understand, you know, the whole like package here, which is like each one of these tools and how they can be used differently to a different person. So, you know, when I first encountered that Apex in my buddy's basement running, you know, all of his tanks in his whole house, like, oh, wow, that thing is kind of nerdy, but cool. I'm not sure if that's for me. Like in this bracket, like, I don't know who this isn't for. I don't know. I don't know that person.
Well, that's great, because I mean, that is really what we tried to do with the A3 series more than anything. We wanted anyone to say that is something that I should probably do.
Even the other models now, the Pro and the Apex, is like before it's kind of like, well, it has these extra sensors. Like, well, I don't know. So what? Like, it's just some more sensors. Like, I don't need any more sensors in my life, I don't think. But actually, they come together to do different functions for you. You
Yeah,
know, like I am going to monitor and control the tank differently, and control means different things now. It can be remote control, it can be automated control, it can be a mix of both.
Yeah.
And monitoring isn't just sensors; it's sensing the power and electricity what everything uses.
We're giving you the tools for you to be able to create your own success.
All right.
You know, and I don't think you can say it more simple than that.
We have something that's coming out this afternoon, but before that, before you share what that is there anything else you want to share about the big launch today?
Well, I need to let you know when it's available.
Oh, and what does it cost?
And what does it cost, right? You know, we left that to the very end, right? So, you know, we're keeping this very simple. So it starts at $300 for the A3 Apex Junior. That's going to include the Apex, the power supply, the probes, everything you need to be able to get going. Okay. Then we have the A3 Apex, right, which includes everything you need, the probes plus the power bar. That's going to be $600. Then we finally have the Apex Pro, right, which includes the top of the line accessories, the liquid level sensor, the power bar, the soft touch finish, all of those things for $900. So it's a $300, $600, $900 option. The 25th anniversary edition is the same price. $900.
Free, a couple free extra things and some fun badging.
You know, and I didn't water that down. It's not $299.95. That's how we have it listed, but $300, $600, $900. When is it available? All right, so that's the win. The win is the A3 Apex Pro 25th Anniversary Edition and the A3 Apex are available tonight at midnight. Mm-hmm. So tonight, these will be available for you to load up your cart, you know, set the alarm, check out, and be in business. The A3 Apex Junior is going to be in the second half of August. Maybe that will change by later today, and I can give you an exact date. But the A3 Apex Junior is still just a couple weeks out, but that'll be available in the second week in August. So if you're looking at it and you think the monitoring only is for you, you know, that's coming. If you're ready to get into monitoring and control, the A3 Apex and the A3 Apex Pro are available tonight.
So this is 3 weeks, give or take a week, out as they're finishing all the things, getting all the last bits nipped and tucked, packaging and stuff. These ones you could actually get tonight.
And then when are the accessories? The accessories are going to become available the same time the A3 Junior becomes available. So the new optical leak sensor and all the liquid level sensors and the new magnetic optical sensors, those will become available in the second half of August with the A3 Junior availability.
But there's something else happened today, actually, at 3 p.m. We're going to do my favorite thing.
What is your favorite thing, Ryan?
I love going live, and I love giving stuff away. That's my favorite.
I can't wait. So we're going to go live. We're going to answer your questions about everything Ryan and I talked about, right? We talked a lot about controllers. We talked about Neptune Systems. We talked about our new A3 series. We talked about new accessories. Like, this was a jam-packed informational video here for you guys. And now we're going to answer questions live.
Yes. And today, if you ask a question in this video, the one you're watching right now in the comments,
this YouTube video,
I'm going to go looking for my favorite question, whichever one happens to inspire me. So go ahead and shoot for that. That question, I'm going to find a Apex 25-year anniversary, and we're going to ship it to you. There's a second one that's going to come from Paul in the live.
So the person who asked my favorite question in the live, I'm going to put right on the spot. I'm going to have to choose my favorite question in the live, and I will also give away a 25th anniversary edition of the A3 Apex Pro.
All right, so ask those questions in this video, ask it in the live. Somebody, or two people actually, are gonna get a 25-year anniversary. They're gonna get a hat, shirt, and all the stuff. And we will see you then, 3 p.m. Central, asking all your questions. We may have a few other secret tidbits about all the rest of the stuff, and we'll fit them in then.
Stay tuned. Thanks.